This is Scott Spears, and on the feed of the historic death of Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, we look to get an opinion or two from former Dean of the White House Press Corps, Helen Thomas. Helen, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm glad to see that people power is finally winning because people have been so apathetic to tyranny for a long time.
What do you think has changed that?
I think that people are fed up with the greed they see and the maladministration and the failing of the promises, especially Obama. I mean, they all make promises that they have not been able to uphold. In fact, they betray them.
What do you think Obama's biggest betrayal has been so far?
Oh, I think undoubtedly to the Palestinian people. I mean, to threaten to veto statehood when people have been incarcerated for more than 40 years, treated like dogs under Israeli rule. Our support of Israel is unconditional.
What do you think has been, people in politics use this word all the time, flip-flop. What do you think his biggest flip-flop has been?
I think the man caves too much. He doesn't stand firm on anything. People don't know what he really believes. So he's got to rectify his character.
Is there any way he can do that before the next election?
Oh, yes, because I think the Republican side, they have no winners. They have no leaders. They have no people who are really compassion, heart, or soul. They only want Obama's head.
So really, in your opinion, none of these people who we've seen so far stand a chance of beating him?
Well, I think that Romney has a good chance, has a chance. But I think that Obama obviously has collected more money, which is the name of the game, and he has a better chance.
Well, Helen, I want to get into the day's events here. Obviously, that was big in of itself, but I'm watching news today, and along with everybody else, the removal and death of Muammar Gaddafi seems to be complete now. When you heard the news, what did you think?
I thought it was a tribute to people power. When people rise up against tyranny and brutality, it does well. And I think that the dictators in Syria and Yemen must be quaking in their boots.
Do you think it's going to happen sometime soon?
I don't know. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be longer, but it's inevitable, inexorable.
What has happened in the world? First it was Egypt, now we're in Libya. What is happening?
I think people have discovered they have a voice, finally, and that they have power, finally.
What was Muammar Gaddafi's biggest difference between with what happened in Egypt? Obviously, Egypt's leader decided to leave when the ultimatum was given to him. What made Gaddafi different?
He isn't so different from most dictators who want to hang in there and don't believe that their power has eroded, and they kill themselves in effect. I think he never thought that the country could turn against him. He thought he had touched all bases.
As everything's still kind of sketchy right now on how the death happened, but do you think this morning when he was leaving in the convoy that he still had some belief that things could still go his way?
I think that all dictators still believe that, and that's their downfall. Except for the Egyptian and Tunisian leaders. I mean, they knew the handwriting was on the wall.
Helen, in all your world travels, and certainly Gaddafi had been in this country in Washington, did you ever run into him anywhere?
No, not personally. Not at all. But I certainly thought he was a bad man. And I'm so happy about people power
Helen,
that the whole country realized.
Helen, what was it about Gaddafi? I mean, he really was, by all accounts, I think today thrown up on the screen even more, a madman.
I think it was megomania. I mean, he took power at a very young man. I think he was 27 or 24, in that area. And he really thought that he had been anointed for life. And this happens so many times. I just pray that this revolution will turn out right, because so many in history, real revolutions, have wound up with another monarch, another dictator, and powerful people who forget they were put in power by people.
See, that's the question I'm asking myself now. After all of the hysteria is sort of starting to die down and will die down in the next few days, this uprising in Libya has been going on, but there always was the question, Muammar Gaddafi's still alive and we don't know where he is. He's gone now. Where does Libya go from here?
Well, I would hope that they will go toward democracy and have fair elections, and that they will live up to their promise. And I think they feel so happy about it. But I know that many revolutions can end it very quickly in dictatorships.
I wanted to ask you a few questions today about the coverage of this event, Helen, because it's been unprecedented, it seemed like to me. First of all, Gaddafi, we really don't know yet exactly how the capture and killing happened. They've all said certain things, but it really hasn't been confirmed by anybody.
Well, they didn't follow the judicial process. We know that.
That's the question, Helen. Should they? I mean, some people are reporting that he gave himself up at some point, and there was no resistance. Should they have captured?
That's hard to believe. I'm sure he was surrounded by security.
Well, I guess when the rebels had him, at one point he was alive. I mean, the videos today of him being put up on the truck and knocked around and stripped of his clothes, he was alive at some point. Should they have just captured him and then tried him?
I always feel that way. They should have, in the same way with Saddam Hussein. But we've forgotten our whole question of really rights of man and so forth. I think it's terrible in a way. I think that we should put these people on trial and really see what happens and learn.
You know, Helen, you bring up an interesting point there when you compare Saddam to Gaddafi. Saddam got a little bit of nasty treatment when he was pulled out of the hole, but he did stand trial and eventually was hung. Gaddafi, I mean, they really beat him up, and he was a dictator, not a nice man, but strung him up and unclothed him, beat him up, did so on and so forth. What was the difference? I mean, Saddam seems like a much more evil figure in the world overall to us, maybe Americans. What was the difference here? Why did Gaddafi get the worst of the treatment?
Well, I think that there was more hatred in his country, especially the way he revolted, and he acted in terms of the revolution, and he wasn't able to accept it. He could have stepped down. Might have even saved his life. But his whole reaction was very, very typical of someone who thinks he's a megalomaniac.
Just want to ask you one question, just a media person question here, because certainly nobody has experience like you. What do you make of the videos that the CNN, Fox News, MSNBC are all showing today of Gaddafi dead, Gaddafi being stripped, bloody? Really some precedents have been set today on what's been shown on American television. What do you make of that? Should we have shown those?
I believe in truth, and I believe that we should know the facts. And you can always turn your television off, but I think it's best that people know what happens to people who grab power and keep it and use it fiendishly and brutally against others.
Helen, I want to ask you this question, and I think maybe this is the most important question here because of your long-standing journalistic career and following of these things.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Well, Helen, the question is, Gaddafi in the 80s was very well known in the United States. We all understood who he was and what he did. Then he kind of fell off the map and almost became a cartoon. I mean, Larry King interviewed him on CNN. He started to dress very funny by, I think, our characteristics. He gave that speech at the UN about 2 years ago in which people walked out. He went on forever and rambled. He became more cartoonish. And I think people today watching this don't understand how bad he was. Helen, if you had to explain Muammar Gaddafi's years in power to somebody, what would you say?
I would say he was absorbed in his own power, and he forgot the people, and he obviously was a little manic. I mean, it's no question that he thought he was anointed forever. I just think that most dictators get in that mood, and that's what kills them in the end.
How did he treat his people? That's the one thing I haven't heard pointed out very well today. How did he treat the Libyans?
Well, I think he treated the worshippers and his fans very well. But the others, obviously, he incarcerated so many people, he killed so many people, he couldn't believe that he was losing power.
This is an opinion question, Helen, and I don't know why I think of this, but with Saddam Hussein, I believe he had delusions of grandeur in his power. But
They all do.
I agree with you, and I think that's what makes a dictator. But I think underneath that, Saddam might have been logical when it came to everyday life. Gaddafi was the one dictator in the world right now who was so visible that I really believe may have just been plain nuts.
He also thought we were friends. He thought all of the time he caved in terms of admitting guilt and so forth, that this would protect him. Well, it didn't. Anyway, it's just unbelievable. I don't believe we should have invaded Iraq. I still want to know why. No leader has told the truth, no official. Why did you go in to kill one man and we've killed thousands now for 8 years, more, maybe more?
Well, here's the $100,000 question, Helen. Would this have eventually spread to Iraq if we hadn't intervened?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
This type of uprising that's happened in Libya and Egypt, would that have ever happened in Iraq under Saddam Hussein?
Oh, I think so. It's very contagious. Of course it would have happened. And it will continue to happen until every dictator takes leave.
We talked at the top of this interview, Helen, about Barack Obama. How does he come out of this looking?
Well, he tried to snatch a little victory today, and I think he's always trying to catch up.
How do the Republican candidates look today?
Horrible, in my book. Where are their ideas for saving employment? What plans do they have to get people hired? That's the issue today, the economy. And I think that they have so missed the boat. I mean, all they want is Obama's head. That's the whole debate, and they're killing each other politically.
You know, Helen, nobody has covered the presidents like you, and to shift just here at the end of this interview away from Gaddafi for a second, because we are in the Republican debate times, why is that? Democrats and Republicans, to some degree, have always opposed each other. Why is it that they are gunning for Obama's head, as you say, and not the job so much? They're gunning for his head.
I think they're obscene. I think that they think he's the only one who's vulnerable, and they have no ideas of how to put the country back on its feet. No real ideas that would cost them something. Republicans have really made a mess of all this. That's why we're in this plan, in horror.
What did the Republicans do that put us in such a bad way?
Pardon?
What did the Republicans do that put us in such a bad way?
Well, I think you just have to look at President Bush's record. I mean, they didn't want to tax the rich. Everybody else is in a hole. People are in bankruptcies, foreclosures all over the country. That's his legacy.
What can we do to turn it around?
Well, I think we definitely have to go back to the old New Deal and start government programs to put people back to work, whether they're on the street or just building bridges or roads and so forth. There's a lot to be done on the infrastructure in this country, and I just think that where are the ideas? I think people are so bereft.
Do you like Obama's jobs bill?
Of course. I like anything that will help the American people get back
So you're
and have prosperity again.
do you think it'll ever get passed?
Of course. I think it has to be. I mean, you can't reach rock bottom and not try to get up.
Well, Helen, you've been a wealth of knowledge as always. It's always a pleasure to get your perspective. I do have one final question, though. That's a personal question. And that on a day like today, when this is going on, do you miss your old job?
Of course. I'd love to be at the White House and ask them why not.
Mm-hmm. What would be the first question you would ask going in right now, the first one?
I would ask President why we don't follow the judicial process and really stand out in the world instead of killing.
In the case of Gaddafi?
Mm-hmm. And everyone else that we've had. I mean, everything is undercover now, and it's unbelievable what we have deteriorated, too.
Well, Helen, I tell you, I personally, it's no shock to anybody. I wish you were there today, asking those tough questions. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, and stay well, and we'll talk again.
Thank you very much.
Scott Spears with the former Dean of the White House Press Corps, legendary journalist Helen Thomas.